Okay. So now we're official. Well, if it's okay, I'm going to open us in prayer and then I will introduce our guests to us. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful day you gave us, this day full of sunshine and melting snow. Thank you for bringing us together this evening and help us, our minds and our hearts, learn what you want us to learn. And please bless Shelley and Mark as they teach us all of their wisdom and love for supporting people through mental health issues. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
So shall I tell them the whole story of how we know each other?
Sure. I think that's great.
Shelley is my sister-in-law's sister. And she is one of 13 kids.
Mm-hmm. I'm the baby.
You're the baby. I don't think I remembered that. She has a heart for mental health and therapy, and they moved from Rochester. How long has it been now? A year and a half?
Yeah.
About?
Yep.
To start their own practice here and to relax a little bit, but I'm not sure the relaxing is helping. The word has gotten out that they're here and they've been busy, and Mark you were traveling back and forth. He is a pain doctor with the Mayo. For how many years were you there?
28 years.
28 years. And now you just consult and go there once in a while.
Periodically, if they need extra help. Yep, more hands.
So that is Mark and Shelley, and they are going to teach us all about COVID mental health and how we can get through all of this.
Yeah.
And you can share more about yourselves. So I'm going to put you on speaker view, and they can share. Please, everyone, keep muted as much as you can and use the chat, or we are going to open it up with a smaller group. I think we can kind of socialize a little bit and ask questions.
Yep. Yes, so we love Fort Collins. We love Colorado. And Mark also does acupuncture and is now fully vaccinated, so he'll be starting to do acupuncture in our home as well. And we both are music lovers and singers and have lots of passions that we hope to create more time for ourselves. But like Renee said, it's been hopping since we've moved here, and we're grateful for that work. But at the same time, we know how difficult and hard it is, this world pandemic that we've all been in. And one thing we know for sure is that, we're in it together, and it has affected all of us in many different ways. And that's what we're going to talk through tonight. And I'm very curious about your stories and also your needs of what you would like to learn along the way through our presentation. Renee, do you have the slides? Can they see the slides? Oh, you're on mute.
Did you want to share those so that you can go through them, or I can?
Well, no.
Oh,
She should do it.
you should.
Because we don't have PowerPoint on this computer.
Yeah, we had to go downstairs
Okay.
to my laptop.
I'm going to get my technical advisor on it here.
Okay.
But you can start.
But I'll start. So the impact of COVID, of course, is different for everyone. And for each of us at different times throughout the year. I know that when a year ago is when we got the news of the shutdown, and Mark was still on the road with Mayo, traveling back and forth. And my daughter and her boyfriend, who are teachers in Denver, came to live with me full time, which I loved, but definitely a transition to have other people in my space of living, right? And all of us getting used to being together. And then of course, they moved out in June when they could get a bigger space. And it's just transition after transition for people. And that's wearing on our mind, body, and spirit. I began with uncertainty and anxiety. I struggle with anxiety anyhow. And so when this kind of came up, I was really thankful for all the work I had done on my journey in therapy myself to have some tools to manage that anxiety. Lots of fear, of course, a lot of disbelief that the virus even was real. And that coupled with anger, right? The COVID-19 disease itself, trying to understand what this is, and some people having it. And as we go through these, I'm going to pause and I want you to look at this list, and I want you to be able to comment about, out of these, what have you struggled with? Loss of loved ones, neighbors, and coworkers. Loss of a job, or maybe your kids lost a job and there's financial insecurity. Childcare struggles, those are real. Our neighbors, we had to take their little ones many, many days as they struggle to keep their businesses open. And a huge one is isolation, right? Because our choir was stripped away. We could no longer sing together. We could, no longer play our instruments. I had to, we had to walk our son through the sadness of college and not being able to play in jazz band. And just being at home and alone. That brought a lot of fatigue. I think one of the biggest things I've noticed with clients is the brain fog fatigue of isolation. When will we get back to normal? What is the new normal? Fears about getting the vaccine or the access and side effects. And that's kind of, we can kind of update your thoughts and feelings about that. I actually experienced some guilt for having work, having gotten the vaccine ahead of others. And I experienced some guilt, like I had done something wrong, even though logically I knew I didn't do anything wrong, but I still experienced guilt. Many people, and we'll talk about the statistics of depression, how that has increased and manifested through COVID. And matter of fact, I was working with a client yesterday from Rochester. She's a life coach at Mayo, and Mayo is opening up a whole unit in their interventional medicine of a 9-month program for, they're calling it Peacock, COVID, long-term COVID effects on people, rehabilitation. So we know this is real. We need people on board. And I was really proud of Mayo to hear that they're launching this program and people can enroll in it for 9 months. And then of course, stress, the stress of how do I deal with this and not seeing my grandkids and, not seeing my dad, who, if I just even talk about that, I get teary. He's 91 back in Wisconsin, and not too swift at Zoom. And so that puts all this pressure on my sister who lives there to do all of this plus work, so lots of impact on us that we kind of brush over. And then it manifests in the body physically, mentally, spiritually, and comes out sideways in mental health and in pain. This guy. So let's kind of talk over from this list here that you see. I want to open it up so you can unmute yourself, just kind of popcorn take, turns of what did you experience for the impact out of this list. And there might be some impacts, other things that I'm not picking up on, but I'd like you to share and this be a group discussion and holding each other in this, space tonight of really sharing intimately what's going on with you. So anyone who wants to share, if you know someone who's struggled with one of these and you want to share about that.
I'm Camille,
Hi, Camille.
and I actually was in isolation for about a half a year before COVID because of being immune suppressed.
Oh,
And so it's been about a year and a half because I live by myself, that I'm completely by myself except for helpers coming in. And Renee was really nice to bring food for me when I was really, really sick. And I really, really appreciated that. But yeah, it's interesting, but I grew up in North Dakota where we were kind of isolated anyway. But I wanted to ask you, do you know Kion, who worked in orthopedics? The blood
Yeah.
tester? He is
Yep.
my son's father-in-law.
Oh, really?
oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, he's my son's
Small
father-in-law.
world.
Yeah, he's now taking care of their little one, Isaac, because Isaac is now 20 months old and all over the place.
Yeah.
So he came to take care of his little one because they live at Poughkeepsie. She teaches at Vassar statistics, and my son is he's a chemical engineer. So they needed help with the little one.
Yeah. So Camille, I can't imagine being isolated that long, and thank goodness for,
Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had two strokes, so that's hard on electronics. But my twin actually died at Rochester 40 some years ago, and that's kind of an added stress, you might say, because I'm a twin, and it's the emptiness. I don't know if you understand twins, but there's
I have two sisters who are
energy.
twins. Yeah.
the energy that is there when one's gone. I joined twinless twins, but it's been a real adventure, but a growth, I think, in my Christianity. I think a real growth in depending on God and what a friend you have in Jesus. But the Zoom has really helped with
Yeah.
that. And I'm going to have to leave pretty soon because my son is visiting with my little granddaughter right now. So as soon as they come, I'll gotta leave.
Sure.
So that's
Sure.
my thing. But I certainly appreciate Renee. She's a honey.
Yeah. And how great to have a church community that is doing those extra steps to make sure that you all have resources.
Yeah, I was super sick over the Thanksgiving, and they brought meals to me, and I don't know what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Camille. Anybody else on here experience or have grandkids that wants to share? Okay, we'll move on then. So we're leading into stress. So I don't know, Renee, if you can pull up the next slide. Yeah, so stress is such a broad category. Everybody has stress. It's what you do with it. Yeah. I mean, we're none of us, God has even said, none of us are going to get out of here unscathed. What he promises is that he's going to be with us. But stress brings feelings of fear, anger, sadness, worry, numbness, or frustration. Noticing changes in your appetite, in your energy, desires and interests. That has definitely been impacted by COVID for all of us, I think, if we're being honest, to list some things in that category. Difficulty concentrating and making decisions, difficulty sleeping or having nightmares, and physical reactions. So we know that stress on the body does a havoc with migraines and body pains, stomach issues, and all sorts of things. And that's really a lot of what Mark also sees in his practice at Mayo, the impact of stress on the whole system. And of course, stress worsens the chronic health problems and your mental health conditions. And I think we've seen a huge increase statistically, the use of alcohol and substances. And we've had, I think I recently read it was like 3 times the amount of inpatient substance abuse occurring since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're, trying to medicate our stress by acting out using things. And that also includes, it's not on here, but sex and pornography and those addictive things that also bring about shame. So what I want you to do is think about taking these slides, this is recorded, so maybe going back, and for each bullet, just write down some of the things or circle things that you've experienced and be curious about it for yourself. Like, have you had physical reactions from stress of being in the pandemic? And just journal those down. Because what we know is that when we can name what's happening in our body, and we're sensing beings. So when we slow down enough to sense what is going on, and we tell our story or we put that out on paper, we have a neurochemical shift in our brain that actually happens. That's why psychotherapy is so important, because we're actually changing brain chemistry. Okay. And isolation is the #1 thing that shuts people down. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Shame that keeps us from contacting someone like me, to work with. So stress, I want you to be curious about, okay, do I have any of these on here, and when did that happen? And, how am I handling that? So the next slide, Mark, you can talk about this, what stress can do to our brain chemistry.
Well, I guess the slide is really more about the statistics. As Shelley said, there's been an increase in mental health challenges that people have been dealing with. And prior to the pandemic, it was approximately 1 out of 10 adults who reported symptoms of depression or anxiety. And that has increased to anywhere 2, 3, or 4 times the amount, which is really pretty dramatic, because those kinds of numbers really don't normally change that much. Mm-hmm. And the chart there shows some of the kind of discrepancies in terms of who gets affected the most by this. And kind of related to the last slide, people that have chronic health conditions or are generally not in as good health tend to report more depression and anxiety symptoms. And that kind of circles back into some of the chronic health conditions and the amount of pain that people are having, or headaches, et cetera, as well as anxiety and depression. Generally, people who are living alone, minorities, and people who have financial challenges have also disproportionately seen substantially higher increases in the amount of depression during the pandemic.
Do you have any questions on that, or experience that you want to share that you've noticed? Anybody? Where maybe a loved one hadn't, had a depression mode, but might be in that now, that you're concerned about? No? Okay. All right, we'll move on. Of how has staying safe, interesting to me, staying safe, which we were all taught how to do during the pandemic by the CDC, which we're thankful for. But how has staying safe also hurt our emotional and mental well-being? we know that 70% of communication comes from body language and facial expressions. 70%. That's a lot. And then we cover up our face, right? And I frankly like to do therapy over telehealth because that's my main key is I'm tuning into the face and the body. And when people would come with their mask on, it was really challenging because, 70% of communication happens through the body and the face. Very thankful for technology. If we think back in 1918 in a pandemic, they weren't so lucky to have Zoom, right? But for a year and a half now, this has been a challenge in communication and has affected how and if we express our feelings and needs. On a normal day, depending on your family of origin, you may have been taught that we don't want to talk about feelings. If you're Swedish, like Mark is, or German, like me, you definitely were taught, don't talk about your feelings. You only get happy ones, and that's it, right? So on a normal day, I think we all struggle identifying what am I feeling and what do I need? Then you add the pandemic in and we take away communication. This is definitely affecting how we're relating to each other, how children are relating to their friends. I've seen a huge increase in middle school and high school kiddos in my practice. I used to just see adults, maybe a teen every now and then, but it's overwhelming. So we know that the kiddos are struggling in relating and communicating because their primary way of expressing has been taken away. Social distancing necessary, right, leads most of us to some form of isolation. And for people, I think, who are more introverted, it's like a gift, almost like, yes, I don't have to go out and socialize because I got the COVID card. And I've heard that quite a bit. I'm more of an extrovert, but I like my alone time. And during the pandemic, I think I've gotten really to cherish and like my alone time. But I'm not sure it's necessarily good and healthy for me. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've been aware of is just the rhythm of life that's disrupted. And if you're an extrovert or an introvert, just going to church, gatherings, having people come over, being able to go over to the neighbors and stand on the front porch, freely going in the grocery store, those sorts of things that however you do communicate has been disrupted in that kind of normal daily interactions that we have.
Yeah. And the other issue of, one of the things that hurt our emotional, mental well-being is the lack of physical touch. So we are born to be in relationship and connect with others. Animals are born to be in relationship and connect. So we see it all through God's creation that this is absolutely necessary for us to thrive. Virginia Satir was one of the first pioneers of studying family systems and human relations. And she's one of our favorite theorists. But she did a study and realized that humans need 6 seconds of loving touch, hugging, holding hands, gentle touch of reassurance multiple times per day for the body, mind, and spirit to thrive. We need 4 hugs a day to survive well in our mental health, in our energy and system to function well. So that means we need 8 hugs a day for maintenance. We need 12 hugs a day for growth.
And she uses the word hugs liberally, and I think it really includes any sort of touching, this
Yeah.
is a shaking of a hand,
Shaking hands or
not the kind of cursory, but really kind of making a
Connecting.
connection on that. That's what she's referring to as a hug, I think. So
that serotonin release to each other, the connection. So yeah, staying safe has also, made us depleted of that, especially if you're alone and you don't have folks coming over. So, that may be news to you. I think most people don't realize that statistic in that study that Virginia did, that we need, 12 hugs a day for growth. And she says they should last 6 seconds. That's kind of a long time. But I don't mind with this one. But, that's why I also think animals can also kind of help us get that connection, but definitely skin to skin human touch is necessary. A big thing too, I think, dating, what to do. So CDC had a whole, this is what you should do if you're wanting to date and follow these guidelines. We've never had that. Maybe you've had that with, your parents growing up, that you can't be out after, 8 o'clock or something like that. But I mean, the CDC putting out, this is, if you're dating, this is what you should do. Too much time with the same people. This has put a spotlight on marital struggles. And actually we've seen an increase in the divorce rate, and definitely domestic violence has increased 10 to 25% during COVID. That's huge. And staying safe did impact us by lost time doing fun activities we once enjoyed, like seeing family, grandchildren, sharing meals together, creating music, attending graduations. My son graduated from college and they didn't have one. So we had one here, big milestone for him. Weddings, many weddings, delayed or canceled. Some activities we can never have again. So again, use this slide and kind of go through after, sometime this week and say, well, how has staying safe kind of emotionally affected me? Anything on here that stands out? Okay. Anyone want to contribute to this? Anything else of how staying safe has affected you?
I think travel.
Travel.
We're big travelers in our family, love to travel, and the inability to be able to go out and see diverse things and see the same thing.
Yeah.
Way out and not having that stimulation of something novel is quite difficult.
Yeah. Right. The fun things we all look forward to. Yeah. Getting to go.
Travel is a privilege too, I understand that part of it, but when the privilege is taken away, it's hard sometimes. So.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that the whole isolation piece for people that were already maybe somewhat isolated, and then add COVID to it, the whole physical touch piece is huge. That it might not, they might have been barely meeting survival rates to begin with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's even worse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think, kind of considering a list like this is helpful so that we can be aware, of some of those things that are missing. There's a grief that can go along with that, but also how can I replace that? Because I'm not having even those kind of incidental little touches or these eye contacts with people, the neighbors or whatever. How can I make up some of that difference? And we need to be more explicit about that.
Yeah. More intentional.
More intentional, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of pet adoptions have been happening.
Our daughter had trouble finding a dog to adopt and waited for a very long time.
Yeah. a rescue dog, it took them like 3 months,
3 and 4
3 or 4
months, yeah.
months.
Yeah. Good for the doggies and, but yeah, there was definite that need for connection. Mhm. So let's move on to signs of clinical depression. We can just quickly go through these. I first want to say that I see us humans as not diagnoses. There's such a stigma around mental health. We all go through stages in life, as many know, are older than me and have much more wisdom on that. So the DSM-5, which we would use for criteria, is just to help us guide treatment or therapy. That's all it's used for. It doesn't define who you are. I don't believe people are, I have depression. I don't use that language. I like to see it as a more depressed mode. I'm in a depressed mode and my brain chemistry is off, and I'm needing some more skills to get that brain chemistry back. So I really want to be sensitive to the stigma that goes along with mental health, terms. I don't see people as in that at all. So, to be in a depressed mode, you have to have at least 5 of the following symptoms for a 2-week period. And at least one of the symptoms must be diminished interest, pleasure, or depressed mode or mood. I can tell you that the depressed mode in children comes out as anger. If you have a grandchild who's really, really angry, it's most likely chemical imbalance and depression mode coming on. So you can read through these, fatigue and feelings of worthlessness. A big one I think that I see a lot is the diminished ability to think or concentrate. And it's really hard when you're in a depressed mode to make a decision. And then, when it becomes the brain chemistry is tilted so far that there's recurrent thoughts of suicide ideation and not really wanting to live here anymore. So, it's important to know these. So if you or a loved one is in this place, know you have choices and there's help there. There's support. Okay, great support. And I think about my great grandmother who, had like 9 children and 5 of them died, and 3 died at birth and 2 from pneumonia at age 4. She had postpartum depression, but no one knew what that was. And they just said, well, she's crazy, and put her in the, funny farm out on a farm in Wisconsin. And I think how far we've come and how grateful I am to my great-great-grandmother for having to survive and go through that. And no one being able to hear her or acknowledge, hey, it's okay. You've had a lot of loss and your brain chemistry is off. And we've got solutions for that. So I have a lot of honor for those who have gone before, for us to even be able to talk tonight about this and not feel ashamed. Okay, and real quick, the signs of general anxiety. Oh, adjustment disorders. So adjustment disorder is a common set of reactions to stressful events or a situation like COVID. So, having emotional or behavioral symptoms within 3 months of a specific stressor occurring in your life. That can even be getting married. That's a adjustment disorder having a baby. And you can kind of read through these different types of adjustment disorders, with the depressed mood, with anxiety. Sometimes it can be mixed or anxious and depressed. It just depends. With disturbance of conduct, like many kids I'm seeing are having trouble just going to school and giving up and just saying pretty much, I don't care. And then you can have mixed disturbance in emotions and conduct. So depression and then conduct. That's very popular too among the young people right now. So you can read through those more about, the adjustment disorder category. And I think we're all, if we're honest, have gone through some of this year and a half.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one, major depression and adjustment disorder. The word disorder isn't meant to be pejorative, but just to say this is a set of symptoms that really is worthy of identification, identifying that you're not alone, that a person that's experiencing these symptoms has options that may be medications, maybe counseling that can be helpful for it. The next slide is about generalized anxiety disorder, which is a little bit more pervasive. This is something that would go on, many more months at a time, and it's really not as much specifically tagged to any incident, but just kind of a state of anxiety about multiple different events or activities or concerns, difficult to control. And again, associated with some of these other symptoms, which are a little bit common to other conditions as well, this fatigue and difficulty with concentration and irritability, sleep disturbance.
So the big slide that I really wanted us to talk about tonight is what keeps us from getting support. So I'm going to ask you that. It's up here and I gave you the answer, but
Thanks.
yeah, general, all those, but shame.
I thought it was, we didn't have the phone number.
Oh yeah,
No, it's shame.
It's shame. So shame is the number one thing that keeps us from reaching out to help and support when we are struggling. Shame is the belief that I'm not enough. And, I should be able to handle this. Somehow I'm not doing life right. So according to Brene Brown, I'm sure you've maybe heard of her or your church has done talks about her research. She's a psychotherapist that has led shame research for over 3 decades. And she has found that all human beings, except those who suffer from sociopath pathology, that's where you don't feel or acknowledge the hurt of yourself or anybody else, sociopath. They're the only ones on the planet that doesn't experience shame. Just take that in. They're the only ones because their brain chemistry doesn't have the ability to experience shame. At some point in all of our lives, at some moment during the day, shame has come forward. Whether you were in high school and didn't think you were good enough for the cheerleading team, or in a job when you were working, or shame is we experience shame by everyone. And if we go back in biblical time, we know that Adam and Eve experienced the first shame when they covered up, when God said, "Where are you hiding?" Like, duh, I can see you. And they were covered up and they had shame. Okay, so it's been with us since the beginning of time. Brene Brown says shame corrodes the very part of us that believes we are capable of change. So messages can include, I should be able to handle this, others are, so why am I struggling so badly with the virus? I'm weak if I talk about my mental health and what's going on for me. I'm scared. I'm going to be judged. I started out that way, like where I would park the car and kind of run into my therapist's office because I had so much shame and I didn't want anybody to see me. Right? That's shame. It's embarrassing to admit that I need help. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and so if you had the stomach flu, you just went out and you threw up in the gutter and you still milked the cows. Like you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, girl, and get to work, right? And you know, that's a good work ethic. And it taught me that it's not okay for me to reach out for support when I'm struggling. Okay, so I want to open it up to like talk about shame statements that you've experienced, or even like some of your kids or grandkids have experienced, because we all have it. So let's just talk about it. When have you had a shame, Brene Brown would call them a shame spiral?
I think what's funny about COVID is people aren't busy, but usually the excuse is I'm too busy. And you cover up with your busyness in your life,
Yes.
and you use that as an excuse.
Yes, been there, done that, always on top of that. Yeah, right. Because when we're busy, we don't have to slow down to feel or be present with God, or, you know, because we are taught to not want to feel those feelings. That there's something wrong with us if somehow I'm not doing like the Joneses over there.
I think there's a lot of people too, like me, that are care providers, right? And so you're caring about others. I shouldn't need help.
Ah, yeah. Very, very true. Right. Anybody else want to talk about shame, or if they've ever experienced it? No need to, no pressure here. If not, we'll kind of go on about how is your own stress and anxiety. We'll talk about this. So learning to cope with stress in a healthy way will make you and those around you whom you care about able to become more resilient. When I first started therapy, I had no idea what the term self-care even was. I didn't get it. Like, what do you mean? I go to work, I work hard, and that's what the world is about. Giving back to others and doing it until you can't you drop dead in your bed at night at 10 o'clock, right? So I had to really learn what self-care was. And to do that, I had to kind of look at my past messaging of what did I think was what I was supposed to do, and kind of create a list to do the opposite. Slow down. If I'm not feeling well, I don't have to go out to the barn and puke in the gutter. I can actually stay in bed, right? Physical activity, we know changes brain chemistry. So I do yoga every day and I put it in my calendar for an hour. It's my time with God on the mat. Yeah, Renee, if you can go to the next slide, self-care for stress. Taking breaks from watching, reading, or listening to news stories.
I know that was a huge thing for me early on. Probably the first 2 or 3 months, I was looking at all these charts of where is it spiking, and it just was more anxiety, more stressful, and really kind of learning to check that and say, okay, I'm going to check in periodically with the news. I'm also going to seek out non-COVID, non-pandemic, non-sky is falling sorts of stories to read about, and just give myself a break. Shelley mentioned doing yoga and deep breathing or exercise, whatever the routine is, taking care of yourself and making that an explicit thing. Again, we talked before about kind of losing that natural cycle of a lot of the activities and the rhythms, throughout a day or throughout a week. And so reestablishing some of that for ourselves has been a challenge, but it's one that I would highly recommend, and I think it definitely pays off.
Yeah. So in there, I think taking care of your body, getting vaccinated. I know there's lots of, that's a whole nother subject, but being able to take care of your body and do enough research. If you're having anxiety about getting the vaccine, asking the right people, doctors who work in this, so those questions are answered, so then you can move forward to the next best step. Yeah, and really all we need to know is the next best step. And when I start to feel anxious, I bring it back to that. That was taught to me by my therapist. Shelley, just the next best step. What is that today? Maybe it's just getting out of bed and getting a shower today. Yeah.
When I think that's something that really comes out when we see the pandemic stretch now over 12 months, and not exactly sure how many more months things will continue in whatever phase. It's just too long of a time frame for us to kind of really get success to say, well, we're just going to wait it out till it's over. And at some point it really becomes more important, those little next steps, like, am I going to make the bed today? Am I going to go out on a walk? What can I do to try to connect with somebody else, either by making a Zoom call or
reaching out to Renee, yeah, right. Because your people are around, So connecting with community and faith-based organizations. Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a tricky balance, that online stuff. I mean, I have fatigue from being online, 8 hours a day with clients. And then, in the evenings, connecting with my kids or something, I'm tired. So it's a balance to kind of say, okay, I'm going to not go on Facebook, because why do I need to do that? Because I've had a lot of screen time today. And yet, if I'm feeling like I need a connection, to allow myself to say, yeah, I'm going to go on Facebook and connect with a positive story.
And again, it's connecting in ways that may be different from a year ago. There's a little bit of a hurdle to say, well, should I call up somebody that I'm used to seeing? And actually just today we got a call from a neighbor a couple houses down whom we haven't talked to. We would see her riding the bike and walking in the neighborhood.
She's 80.
She's not been doing that recently. And she called, just reaching out. And I think she had just gotten her car cleared out with the snowstorm, and
she's going to the grocery store.
Kind of calling the neighborhoods, people saying, does anyone need groceries? I can get out. And I'm sure it took a little bit for her to kind of make that call, but boy, just getting that was so special.
Made our day.
And I'm sure she felt good reaching out. So just the little things like that can have such a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so moving forward, how to help others in support of mental and emotional well-being. So many people in our society have the viewpoint that helping others is of paramount importance. Who has that? It's really popular as Christians. It is more blessed to give than to receive, right? This belief can generate problems on the part of the helper, because often we neglect our own needs. This came from one of my professors, Dr. Ballou, who I just adore. And he pretty much pointed at me in class and said, that is a big helper. I mean, she's rescuing to no end. And I was just like, oh, really? And he was like, yep, and we need to look at that, why you're doing that. Rescuing behavior is done from the position that I'm okay, you're not okay. I have to step in and help you because you don't get it. I don't think you can do it. My way is better. This was really harsh to hear in school, but it was true. Much of this drive to rescue others is driven by one's own internal level of anxiety, actually. Because if I can help you, then I'm not going to feel so anxious myself. And I don't have to look inside with my own anxiety. You cannot change or help others unless they want to change or be helped. Tape that on your fridge. Then they must do it and not you. Truly helping another person can only occur when you are doing something for them that they desire and need. Now, I'm curious about your feedback on this, because this might be like throwing well, that's not what Jesus did. I mean, come on. He gave his life for us. I mean, he was the ultimate, then rescuer. Well, yes, but we're not Jesus. He did give his life, but how are you depleting yourself by rescuing? And have you done that versus being a helper? And we just want you to think about that.
Well, and it's the flip side of things too. If somebody is coming to help you or to help me with something, and it's not on my agenda as something that I want, it's important to understand that I'm the one who can call the shots, and I'm the one to say, hey, I have this need that I would like. And that it really is up to me to make the changes. And if I want help, I can ask for it.
That's really hard when you have kids with addiction or kids with major clinical depression and really struggling. I get it, it's really hard. But let's move to the next slide. So what is a rescuer? A rescuer gives help or just jumps in when not asked. Doesn't learn if offer is welcome. Like someone might say, no, I'm okay, I really don't need it, but they keep pushing. Gives more help than is needed and does so longer than necessary. Doesn't seek feedback or check results about help being given. And feels good when accepted and bad when turned down. That's a rescuer. I can tell you I was very much that about 10 years ago. A helper listens for a request, presents an offer for possible help, gives only what is needed, inquires periodically as to how their help is being received and what's the impact, and then checks for results. Okay. So how to approach others whom you're concerned about. And I think this is a big one. That's the next slide. So be aware of your helper versus rescuer stance. Establish connection or reconnect if things haven't changed with the pandemic. Express that you care for them and value their well-being. So I'm not saying, if someone's struggling, just close a blind eye and don't, well, I don't want to rescue. No, that's not it. We do want to extend the hand of Christ and with true love and sincerity, knowing we can't fix them. Express that you care, right? Share your own experiences and struggles during the pandemic. That's key. So you want to start with yourself. Instead of saying, oh, it seems like you're really stressed out and you're really going down the tubes. You should do this. You should really go see your doctor. Well, that's, they're going to get defensive. Their shame's going to get ignited. So share your own experience and struggles first. And then be curious to learn what they are experiencing, changes in activities or connections, about their health, job, their sense of security and relationships, and their emotions. And ask if they are struggling to figure things out or come up with solutions. And offer to help as you can and listen for their response. So many times we ask a question and we already have the answer that we're going to talk next at them versus just listening for the response. So where to reach out during COVID? This is our last slide here today. So nobody's alone in this struggle. Spouse, partner, family, start by bringing up your feelings. And there's a feeling wheel you can find online, download it on the phone. Mark would have one on the phone at Mayo. And like every time he went to the bathroom, he'd check in with, how am I feeling? Because the pace is so fast, right? Patient after patient after patient. It's like, that's not healthy, period. So there's a feeling wheel you can download. Discuss your concerns and what you think might be helpful. Social groups, that's like you guys are doing tonight. I listed some national helplines. NAMI is a great resource. Like if you have a loved one struggling with depression or bipolar disorder or other mental health issues, they have groups you can attend online and just get support and talk to other people. And then the National Suicide Prevention, those are there. Ask your primary care doc for a PHQ-9, and that's kind of the depression inventory form. If you're kind of curious, like, well, I have been some of these on here, just ask for that and fill it out, and then it'll kind of pump back and you can talk to your doc about that. And then find a therapist. You know, if you search on Psychology Today, you can type in your insurance and different therapists will pop up and their specialties. You can read their bios and say, this one seems like a good fit for me. And then give them a call. Okay. Remember, shame is the biggest thing getting in the way of getting support. We all have shame. So having that courage to take the step to say, well, I'm going to jump over the shame hurdle and you know, go for the long run of life and take care of myself. It's the strong who go in to get support. That's what when I had postpartum depression after my third child, I did not want to go in. Mark's like, you need to go in. I did not want to go in. I resisted, finally went in, and she was like, Shelley, did you know that it's the strong who come in for support? I'll never forget that. Never forget that. She was right. So I'm going to open it up now. Let's just talk. What stood out for you during this presentation?
Just how much everybody's dealing with depression. And
Yeah.
just every day.
Yeah.
And it helps me understand why taxes have been so challenging this year.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right.
My mind focused.
Right. Yeah. And it's okay to struggle. It's okay to name it. It's okay to reach for support and say, my brain chemistry is off. I can even see when people come in by their face color, by the affect on their face. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, 15 years or something like that, but I can tell when the chemical imbalance is tilted. So there's nothing to feel like you're, that shame that wants to come in. It's a brain chemistry issue, right? Hmm. And so we deserve support for that, just like any other medical condition. It's no different. But yeah, we all are struggling. Absolutely, with depression and anxiety and adjustment disorders. And yeah. That took a lot of courage for you, Jackie, to talk. I just really want to acknowledge that and
I'm hoping somebody else might.
yeah, and thank you for that. I know when Mark and I are doing some online learning and psychology, and it's always like, I'm an extrovert, so I talk easy, but like the whole class is sitting there, 40 people, and no one is clicking the button. I'm like, damn it, I am not going to click that button because I'm always the one that is talking. I need to let others have a chance. So thank you. You're kind of on the spot here, but being open and honest is how we connect at a deep level. And that's how we heal. Took a lot of courage, Jackie. Thank you for that.
Now I'm debating if it's okay for me to talk or not.
Yes, it is.
I think what's interesting is just how much I have flip-flopped during your talk between thinking about me and thinking about people I know and love. And it's a lot to process and think about.
Yes. Yeah.
We're all on both ends of everything. And I realized that as I was kind of looking through some of these slides too, of last week versus this week, it's sometimes I'm struggling with feeling alone, and other times I'm trying to offer support and encouragement for someone that I sense is feeling alone, and talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I feel overwhelmed and helpless because the need is so great, right? And then I feel alone and kind of depressed, mode of, is this ever gonna shift? And then, we do know that gratitude changes brain chemistry. And so that's where we seek our faith with God and realize, oh my gosh, the sun is beautiful. And by the way, the snow was beautiful. We are connected with God all the time. And so we got to tune into what we do have, but not minimize our sadness either. Not minimize that it's important for me to talk to my doctor about feeling depressed. Yeah, or reaching out to my pastor and the church and seeing what resources are there. It's a both and.
I wanted to say that I've kind of got a list going of different therapists and counselors, and I'd be more than happy to connect with anyone and help figure out the best fit. Our mental health team has also kind of given me some support and helped me help people find a good fit for therapy. So lots of different ways of getting that help.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. It's a little after 8. If
Yes.
it's okay, I think I'll close us. My daughter just brought me this, so I'm sorry.
Oh, Haley, what a great kid.
But in my notebook from Marge, I found a writing called Just Enough, and it seems like it would fit really well for us to close with. Sometimes only the step I'm on or the very next one ahead is all that is illuminated for me. God gives just the amount of light I need for the exact moment I need it. It is in these times I walk and surrender to faith, unable to see the future and not fully comprehending the past. And because it is God who has given me what light I have, I know I must reject the fear and doubt that threatens to overtake me. I must determine to be content where I am and allow God to get me where I need to go. I walk forward one step at a time, fully trusting that the light God sheds is absolutely sufficient. Life is a walk. Each day we take steps. Our tomorrow is determined by the steps we take today. Amen.
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 Mm.
Thank you, Shelley and Mark. That was
Oh, you're so
helpful.
welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Nice seeing you.
Nice meeting all of you. Peace.